and it will be infiltrated. Now, it's very simple, the answer to that. There was a man who lived 2,000 years ago, who lived 33 years on this earth, and died a death right there. And he established an organization. This organization was infiltrated from the beginning. Judas was an infiltrator. And not only that, but that there be no confusion, he said that there would be infiltrators, and there would be, for instance, through the Blessed Virgin Mary and La Salette, that Rome will be actually the seat of the Antichrist, which means the place of power. That's where the big decisions of the Satan are going to be made, and that's where the levers of power of Satan are going to be. The king's got to live somewhere, the human representative of the king. And he could live in Jerusalem, he can live in Moscow, he can live in London, he can live in New York, but Rome's going to be his home. And Rome is going to be the seat of the Antichrist. Not just Rome, the physical city, Rome, the Catholic Church. And referring particularly to the Pope and his powers. So to say that an organization shouldn't be formed because it'd be infiltrated means that Jesus Christ made a mistake in establishing the Catholic Church. And furthermore, it's a foolish way of looking at the reality. You say a reality check of human nature. Well, there's no need to do a reality check. When you get married, they have the exhortation. I always read the exhortation. You guys skip it if you want to, but I never skip it. The exhortation before marriage, which is allowed to be skipped, it says there are going to be sacrifices you have to make in this marriage. The sacrifices are usually difficult and irksome. Only love can make it easy, and perfect love can make it a joy. But as you enter this marriage, the exhortation of the church says you're getting married, you're happy, she's happy, but as soon as you get out of that church, it's over. The happiness crap is over. All right? And you know that when you get out, you're going to have a miserable 50 years unless you die earlier. And so you know that you're going to have all kinds of problems. And it says you don't know the troubles of married life, but you know there will be troubles in married life. Does that mean you shouldn't get married? Right. In fact, so obviously you need to get married because somebody's going to be miserable for 50 years in order for the human race to continue, in order for the church to continue. And that marriage is still a beautiful institution, a sacrament, even though there's going to be troubles in every marriage. So should you not get married because there's going to be problems? Most certainly in your marriage? Of course not. You don't listen to that garbage. You must get married. And if you're going to become a priest, you're going to have all kinds of problems in the priesthood as well. But you still need to be a priest. So that argument is not really even worthy of being called an argument. It's just plain dumb. It's not intelligent enough to be called an argument. It's as intelligent as evolution. It's just stupid, non-founded statements that should not be respected because they have no foundation. And so likewise, to say that there cannot be an organization because the organization will be infiltrated is idiotic. Every single organization in the history of the world has been infiltrated. And everyone has had a collapse. Even the religious orders of the church, the Dominicans, Franciscans, everybody had a collapse. Everybody had a corruption. And then they had to be reformed. And if you look at the most important people on earth, the Jews, all they did was professionally corrupt every couple of years. So when they crossed, they didn't even wait that long. They crossed the Red Sea, they whacked the bad guys, and then within 3 weeks they were evil again. And then they had to be purified in the desert, and after they went in with Joshua, they were evil again. And then they were evil again. And then they were evil again. And when they repented, God did not take away from them the right of being the chosen people. And he was really, and remember, if my kingdom were of this world, I would not be with the Jews, is what he said, remember? My people would have striven that I not be with the Jews. Which indicates specifically, of all the races on earth, probably the worst choice for the Savior was the Jews. But God chose them over other races. And so, because he wanted to show his infinite power. And he's the one that made the Jews wonderful. and he is the one who's going to convert them at the end of the world. We're missing the supernatural aspect. Furthermore, you know that a priest, he's a captain in God's army. He has a duty to communicate what has been communicated to him by the church. And he has a duty to communicate the truth. And so when the bishop came through a couple of weeks, 9 days ago, he did not communicate the truth. He didn't. And when he said that, the resistance is in shambles, it's in great trouble, and there's more than one way to skin a cat. Did he explain the different way to skin a cat? Did he explain the different way to run a resistance? And by the way, they're quoting me. Because when I spoke with Father Zendejas 3 weeks ago, I said, Father, when he first told me he's taking over the parish, he told me on Saturday night, 12 hours before he took over the parish in New York. And I said, you don't just come in and take over a parish. And besides, I don't even know where you stand in regard to the faith. You can't answer to me simple questions of the faith. And I told him, I said, I know there's more than one way to skin a cat. But we're not talking about different ways of skinning cats here. We're talking about different faiths, different ways of thinking, different ideas, not different styles, like a Jesuit style and a Dominican style and a Franciscan style.
Yeah, because he didn't really address that. He said about, I don't even know who Father Zendejas is other than that.
Right.
And I listened to a few of your sermons from the past few weeks now.
Right.
And all that I learned about Father Zendejas was he's more of into like giving retreats.
Right.
And that's the only impression that I really got from him.
Right.
From what the bishop said and from what he said.
Right. And you have to listen to a Sparta conference, it's an hour and 4-minute talk there.
Yeah.
He carefully avoided saying the truth. He was asked specifically.
I didn't listen to that.
Okay, when his hour conference, they asked him, what do you believe? What do you stand for? And he said, I don't have a solution to the church, and you don't have a solution to the crisis in the church. And you ask 15 different people, you get 15 different answers. That was his answer, right?
Yeah. Okay.
And then, of course, what about, and so they tried to ask him what was his teaching. He wasn't able to say it. It's very important to be able to say clearly and simply the truths of the faith. Even we're going to study De Deo Trino. It can be a difficult part of dogmatic theology. That's a study that there's 3 persons and 1 God. When you get to the details of it, it's very complicated for human beings. Right? How 3 is 1, 1 is 3, and yet 1 is never 3, and 3 is never 1. And yet there's no contradiction there. And so how do you see that? Well, that takes you get a headache when you study it, right? And St. Augustine's got the famous miracle about that. He was one of the best understanders of the Blessed Trinity, and he was really proud of himself for understanding the Trinity. And the famous miracle of St. Augustine, he's walking along the beach, he saw a boy taking the Mediterranean Sea and pouring it in a little cup into a hole. He said, what are you doing? I'm putting that sea into this hole. And he said, that's crazy. It's easier for me, a boy, to put that sea into this hole than it is for you to understand the Trinity. And then he disappeared. So then Augustine realized he wasn't that smart after all. It's one of the miracles in the life of St. Augustine, right? So the De Deo Trino is very complex, right? It can be very difficult. But you still know, even though it can be very difficult to understand it, you still know the conclusion is always the same. There's 3 persons and 1 God. And there's 2 processions, 1 nature, 2 processions, 3 persons, and 4 relations. And that's all you need to know. And then explaining it is very difficult. But we have to know it, understand it clearly, even though it's hard for us to understand. Saint Patrick gave the 3-leaf clover explanation. We usually use the triangle, right? 3 angles, 1 area. The angles are not the same, and the Blessed Trinity, right? And so even something that's complex, the Blessed Trinity, you're going to say, this is what we believe. Now let's go through a few months of trying to understand it, and we're going to get a big headache doing that, right? But when we come out, we're still going to believe the same things when we went in. Just try to have a deeper understanding. So when you have to do that about anything you're teaching. You need to say what you're teaching, and then you give the explanation. It can be difficult sometimes to explain, but you've got to be able to say, I am against the modernism in the SSPX. I'm against the liberalism in the SSPX. And then, of course, in our situation here, we have a situation where, the resistance is in shambles, and then what he says in the middle of the talk is you can go to the new Mass.
Father Zendejas?
No, Bishop Williamson, in the middle of the talk a week and a half ago, 9 days ago.
He said that?
Yeah, you can go to the new Mass. He says you can't condemn the people.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Yes,
Yeah,
he
yeah,
did say,
Says
yes.
because you can't say they
Yeah.
shouldn't go, because they're getting a lot out of that.
Yeah, because They
Now-
don't know any better. That's what he
No,
said.
no, that's not it. They are getting a lot out of the Mass. It's benefiting them. Is that true or is that false? You don't have to be a theologian to know the answer to that question. Are the people who go to the new Mass benefiting from the new Mass? Yes or no? No, they're not. Now, if they benefit, why are they benefiting? Because they're sitting behind a column and not paying attention. Because they're saying a rosary. Because they're believing something other than the garbage that's going on the altar. In other words, it's despite the new Mass that they're getting benefits. The new Mass is tearing them down. The new Mass is poison, and it benefits 0.0000 people.
Would you call the new Mass Protestant or?
Yes, it's Protestant. It's even worse than that, really. It is. It's a modernist Mass, which is more than Protestant.
Because it's like a mix of, well, with Bunini, wasn't he a Freemason?
Yes, but again, remember, he was just like the last. This thing has been prepared for several hundred years. So he was just the guy to, like, you know, the building was built, and he just came in and, like, you know, said, put the blue paint here and the red paint there, and you know, and let's use a green tablecloth, right? That's all he did.
Okay.
The structure was prepared of the new Mass and the new theology for several hundred years before Bonini came along. He was just the last bad guy whose job was decorating. That's why they're usually faggots. But, you know, so his job was decorating. That's it. You know, he wasn't the maker of the machine.
Father, the bishop is an intelligent person, obviously. So if he's saying something that's so obviously wrong, why is he saying it?
Well, he's been saying it for many years, actually, even though he tries to say it rarely. And about the new, he said his argument was, just like you can go to the new Mass, people get a lot out of it, so you can go to the SSPX Masses, people get a lot out of that. Now, that argument means you can also go to a Muslim temple, a Muslim mosque, because a lot of people get a lot out of that, right? Yes.
Just a question: if the actual Mass, the new Mass, is not valid, and there's no consecration, how can you benefit from something that doesn't exist?
Okay, we don't say it's not valid. I think it actually is valid because the devil wants to do maximum sacrilege. And there's more sacrilege with Christ present than there is with Christ absent. It's not licit. It's not licit. It's immoral. The new Mass is not licit. Valid simply means it happened. In other words, Christ is there. Doesn't mean he's there in a good way. It just means he's there. That the minimum requirements to make Christ present were required. Valid priest, matter, form, intention. But if that's all you have, it's always a mortal sin, always a sacrilege. It's like, the example given in sacred scripture is marriage relations. Marriage relations are valid as long as you have normal marriage relations. It's able to have children, right? The actual marriage act. But they're not licit unless it's a husband and a wife. If it's a guy and a girl, husband and an adulteress, wife and adulterer, right? Then it's valid, the relations happen, but it's immoral because it's not the husband and the wife. So valid simply means it happens. That's all it means. Doesn't mean good. Anything that's only valid is necessarily evil. It's just one of the requirements is that it needs to be valid. And then it must be more than that. It must be licit. It must be legitimate. That's why when in the April 15th document where it says new Mass is valid and legitimately promulgated, that addition of and legitimately promulgated is all the difference in the world. The example given many, many times in catechism classes, in the last couple of years, is like you tell the police officer, I drove down the road and there was the local bum sleeping in the middle of the street and I drove over him. Okay, don't fix your car. The other option is only one word difference. I drove down the road and I intentionally drove over him. What's the difference? One, your insurance rates goes up. The other one, you get the electric chair. Because one is just called a mistake and an accident because the idiot was sleeping on the road. The other one's called murder. And that one word difference is all the difference in the world. I drove down the road and drove over a bum sleeping in the streets. I drove on the road and I intentionally drove over a bum leaving the street. That's the difference, infinite difference. So likewise, saying the new Mass is valid is okay. Saying the new Mass is valid and legitimately promulgated, that's the infinite difference in the world. That means it's a good Mass. It's legitimate. That's legitimate. And so that's why, and these errors do have an effect. And then also, what do they say? You can go to SSBX Masses because it depends on the priest. Well, no, the church never depends on the priest's individual opinion. The church depends on the teaching of the church, right? Now, the teaching of the, what do you call it, not the individual opinion, but the official teaching of the organization. You represent an organization. Like I mentioned an example earlier today in the hotel. You know, if you are a salesman for Donald Trump and Bill Gates, and you come to the hotel and you break a chair, what's going to happen? The hotel is going to sue you for $500 million. Because you're representative of Donald. But if an illegal Mexican comes in and breaks all the chairs, what are they going to do? They're going to pay for a taxi to get rid of the guy. Because he doesn't have any money. He doesn't represent anything, and you're not going to get anything out of the Mexican. But the other guy who breaks a chair, he represents Donald Trump and Bill Gates. That means they obviously sent you in to break that chair. I mean, you did it as a representative of Bill Gates and Donald Trump. It was obvious. This was the plan from the beginning, and you owe me $500 million, right? And so, because you're not just alone, you represent something, and so the priest represents the teaching of the organization. The Fraternity of St. Peter teaches that the new Mass is okay. The new SSPX teaches the new Mass is okay. We tell people, thou shalt not go to the Fraternity of St. Peter Mass, because they say the new Mass is okay. Therefore, we should also tell people they shouldn't go to the new SSBX Mass because they say the new Mass is okay. You know, what is good for the goose is good for the gander, right? What applies to one applies to the other. You can't just apply it only in one way. And you know that, you know, what's supposed to happen, you know, we talk about this, you know, he said, okay, Bishop Williams was saying it's just a fight between cocks, right? A fight between cocks, you know. A couple of roosters go and fight it out. You know, and that's real popular in the Philippines, cockfighting. You know, they make good money off of it, and they never, you know, if you put a little razor on there, and they whack each other. It's good gambling. Yeah, and they do cockfighting mainly on Sundays. So you know, Sunday is the principal day for the cockfighting. And but in any case, what we're dealing with is not a matter of, if it's just a matter of cocks fighting. If that's truly the case, then what should the bishop say? Let's work it out, right? Let's let bygones be bygones, and you know, you guys, you know, look, I want you guys to shake hands, and right? If it's just two guys in a fight, right? Then okay, let's break it up, you know, and shake hands and move on. But if it's something more, then you're going to say something like, there's more than one way to run a resistance. If there's more than one way to run a resistance, then that means it's not about just two people fighting, is it? It's not about two priests not getting along with each other. There's one way to run a resistance, which is the Father Pfeiffer and Father Hugo and Father Giselle, you know, the way of what we've been doing for the last 2 years. Then there's another way to run the resistance, which is unspecified. Except that he says another way to run the resistance is independent pockets, running discreetly. Well, that discreet running of the independent pockets, who are not making noise, who are not making waves, who are not going around, who are balanced, that's the other method. So don't make waves, don't go on the circuit, you know, be independent, and just discreetly go with the people who are going to take care of you. That discreet method, what does it do? What the Father Zendejas is doing right now in Danbury, Connecticut. He had Mass there last Sunday. There were about 50 people at the Mass. But when I said Mass there 2 weeks ago, there were 36 people at my Mass, and there were about 60 at his. You know, but about 25 of the people at my Mass were not invited to his Mass anyway. So if I didn't say Mass for those 25 people, they would not have had Mass that Sunday, because they weren't holy enough, special enough, to be invited to Father Zendejas' Mass.
So has he taken over?
No, all he did was invade, try to get some people.
Yeah, but he did.
No, he didn't take over. All he did was invade, take over, and set up his own thing, which he was going to do anyway. He just simply did it. He did, and so and also only those invited can come. Only those people that know him personally. Like we know there was Mass in Wilton, Connecticut, last Sunday, and the Sunday before. Sunday before was in John Burke's house, and then last Sunday was in some other place. And so we don't know where. And so, but in Wilton, Connecticut, there was a Mass for those people that were invited. And those people that were not invited, they can't go to Mass.
It's not Catholic.
Of course it's not Catholic,
But it's
right? But that's what he's doing, right? So it's not about, it's not even about just taking over a parish. If he was truly taking over the parish, he would allow all the parishioners to go, right? Now, so those people that aren't on the inside, they're not getting the phone call, and there's no way of knowing when where the Mass is going to be, except for those chosen people. Yeah.
How did he determine who's on the inside and who's on the outside?
He was there 14 years.
Oh, right.
oh, I see.
He was stationed there 14 years, from 98 until 2011 or 12, 2010 or 11.
So he determines that?
Yeah, so he communicates with the people, and they communicate with their friends, and he wants it all quiet, no recording sermons, no announcement on the internet. Remember, he told me that, I mentioned that in the sermon on the Saturday night. He said, I don't want to be announced on the internet. I said, no, you're going to my parish. It has to be public. We've already had people come to their first Mass. Like, even like, for instance, the Indian couple is going to pick me up tomorrow and take me to, Mr. Danik Daniels I'm going to be with him in Goa, right? And the first time he came to Resistance Mass was the last time, right? It was the last time. He found out about the internet, he found out about the Resistance on the internet, and he found out it because he listened to one of the sermons that I said in India. He listened to a sermon in India, and in India I said, we're trying to set up a visit to Goa, and he's a-going, in order to visit the body of St. Francis Xavier at the end of November. And so he found out about it, and then he tried finding out and anyway, you're in Toronto, there was a Mass in Toronto, then he went to the Mass. Now he's going to be flying to Goa, and I will be meeting him in Goa in the next couple of weeks. But how did he find out? Because it was a public notice on the internet. Now we got another family coming to the Mass. They were going to the mainstream SSBX Masses for a little while, but only recently, only for
Pilgrimage.
just basically like months, right? So they've been searching for the truth for many years, but they didn't find the Latin Mass even until just months ago, and then they found the Resistance. If there was only chosen people, then they wouldn't be able to come to Mass. So the same is true of others. Like I've mentioned many times, we have two of our seminarians brand new to tradition, right? So they'll probably be brothers. Some of them might be brothers, but the thing is, we need brothers, and they're brand new to tradition, right? How do they find out? Because of the openness. And that we're not in the time of persecution. And it says in the gospel today, it was in the Mass, you cannot put the light under the candlestand, right? The city on the mountain cannot be hid, right? You are the light of the world. The light of the world has to shine, and let your works be known before men. That's what our Lord said. We have to show the faith in public. This is not an option. It's not an option. In fact, he says, if you confess me before men, I will confess you before the Father. If you do not confess me before men, I will reject you before the Father. So if you confess Christ secretly, you're going to hell. You must confess Christ before men publicly. And so we can't just simply have private masses for our private friends. How do we get those private friends, by the way? How do Father Zendejas and Bishop Williamson get their private friends? Because of a certain archbishop who decided to bring the truth to someone other than his private friends. Archbishop Lefebvre decided that the whole world needed the truth and not just his French people. He knew that whoever called for the faith would get it, and he brought the faith out, and that's how a Mexican and an Englishman entered the Society of St. Pius X. Because he was open in public, they were able to get friends. Now they want to be private and secret.
What is your situation between with Bishop Williamson? Like the,
Oh, it's just same as always.
yeah, but
uh,
he's the only bishop we really have.
Well, the thing is, God will provide.
yes, I know.
We can't put our confidence in men. And Bishop Williamson has done confirmations. He did a confirmation here a
Yes,
couple of
he
weeks
did.
ago.
Yes.
He did confirmations in India. He did confirmations throughout the United States. He hasn't done any ordinations yet for our people, but he says he's going to do an ordination for one this year in June, but not for Kentucky. He's going to be ordained in Kentucky, but not for Kentucky. He'll be going back to India. Won't be with us, Dr. Cedillo. But he'll be helping souls over there, and they need to be helped, so that's fine.
And so he is the one that brought this priest, Father Zendeas, is it? So how,
No, Father Zendeas,
because they came together and...
no, they came together here.
Yes.
Yes, but that was in order to give like a support, to support Father Zendeas. It was very clear he supported Father Zendeas, which means supporting him against Father Pfeiffer.
Yes.
And where is he doing that? In one of Father Pfeiffer's, or two of Father Pfeiffer's parishes, right? So, which is not ideal to do that,
Yeah,
but
it's
that's
awful.
but
It's
that's
really-
what happened, right? And so it's just what matters is, but with Father Zendeas, he's just going to do his own thing in Danbury. He's just doing his own thing.
So is he still with the Society of St. Pius X?
He says no. I couldn't get a clear answer out of him, but he did say that I'm out, right? But for different reasons. Well, what's the different reasons?
Did they throw him out?
He said I'm out for different reasons.
Oh.
Different reasons. But he doesn't say what the different reasons are. He said for different reasons took a long time.
Oh, wow.
That was in what he said here a week ago. Right? But he didn't specify the reasons. It really doesn't matter. He's going to say mass for the people that he approves of, that they approve of him and so on. And also the people there are torn apart. It does matter for our people in Danbury because they're in a state of shock. I was stationed with Father Zendeas. I lived with him for a year and a half. And I always got along well with him. And the people there love Father Zendeas, and they also know me. They love Father Zendeas. They love Father Pfeiffer. They love us both. And they're like, what's happening? They don't understand. And they don't understand why Father just came in suddenly. Because it's the way it should have happened. It's very simple. He would come to Kentucky for a short time, and they would talk to him, and then we would go up together. And then we would go up together, and I would introduce him again to all the people. It's good to have Father Zendeas back. He's with the Resistance, and he wants to say Mass here more often than other places. And so he's going to help us here. He's going to take over the parishes. And but I would make sure that he has to have the right doctrine. And when I've asked him those questions of doctrine, he has not been able to answer them correctly. So therefore, he has not mentioned that he really is a part of the Resistance. He has not. Every other priest that left made some kind of simple statement, right?
So you're going to continue to visit the people who...
Oh, of course. So I'm going there. Just all normal as before, just continuing. That was just an attack of a couple of weeks ago. Our people were in a state of shock. I went there last week. The people thought some of them were saying, "Well, Father just abandoned us because he didn't tell us that a new priest was coming in." Remember also, even though we've only been for 2 years, there's some of those people that have never been to Latin. They have in that parish. Some people have never been to Latin Mass before, except the Resistance. So they don't know Father Zendeas, even though they're from there, right? And the others, of course, most of the other people know him very well. And then Father was there for 20 years, and he did good work there. He was with my brother there. At the beginning, he was with my brother. At the end, and towards the end, he was with me. I was with him. He was my boss.
So that was when you were still with the SSPX?
Yeah, I was there before I got sent to India.
Okay.
Right? I was stationed in Richfield from 2005 2006.
Okay.
Right? With Father Zendeas.
Okay.
And he left in 2010 or 11 or 12, I forget. 2010 or 11. One of those years he went down to Texas. I think 2011. Yeah.
Father, when we went to the conference, there was an elderly gentleman that I know from tradition. His family has put him into Mount Carmel, which is an old age home here, and he goes to the Novus Ordo Mass, and he had asked the bishop what he thought of it, and he made him, he said it was all right. So this gentleman was torn before,
Right.
and now he thinks.
But you see, for a bishop who allowed himself to be consecrated by an archbishop who is famous for being against I mean, the guys who don't know anything about God know that there was this French archbishop who was really mad about the Mass being in the vernacular. And he didn't like the Mass in the vernacular. He liked Latin. He was like a Latin scholar. And this French bishop ordained 4 other bishops because they also liked Latin and they didn't like the vernacular Mass. And the place is called the SSPX, right? That's what an idiot knows about the SSPX. He doesn't know anything about God. He only knows Latin is a language that SSPX people like, and vernacular is a language that Rome likes. And Bishop Lefebvre, he was the pro-Latin guy, and the Pope was the pro-English guy.
But what you tell this gentleman.
And then one of those bishops tells you it's okay to go to the vernacular Mass.
Right.
That doesn't make any sense, does it?
But what do you tell this gentleman now then? Because he.
You tell him that he should not go to the new Mass. The new Mass is damaging to his soul. And that he's better off praying. Like our ancestors have gone years and years and years without the Mass, but they preserved their faith. You cannot, the new Mass is damaging to the soul. You see it. When you see somebody who left the church for 30 years and comes back, they're in better shape than the nuns who were 30 years of that new Mass. Those who are 30 years of that new Mass have got, like, the faith has been sucked out of them. Like a special shop vac, just sucking the faith out of them, and it just, whatever faith was left was. And I remember one guy coming back, he had left the church, I remember when I was a young priest, he left the church back in the 60s or whatever. He came back, and he was trying to find a Catholic church. We couldn't find one, right? He goes, I left the Catholic Church. There used to be a lot of them around. He goes, I've got into all of them. Some of them say Christian. Some of them, I went out the back, it says Catholic. I went in, this isn't Catholic. I goes, look, man, I know what I left, but this ain't it, man. There's got to be one. I know when I was a kid, there's a lot of churches around here.
Yeah. Even some Protestants who converted to Catholicism around that time,
right.
And then the Mass started changing all the innovations. They said, this is what I left.
And in India, just when I was there, and the priest, I'm friends with the priest actually. Not Father Silverage, what's his name? Anyway, I can't remember his name, Father Silverage. And I used to see, because he was at Thomas Mount, I said Mass 50 feet away from his church, right? And he tried to invite me to come over there and say the Mass, and it says, that once he tried to invite me to come over and say the Mass at St. Thomas's place. I used to say private Masses there. He would let me say Masses on the where St. Thomas's body, where St. Thomas lived in the cave and all that. Any priest came, he let us say Mass there. I used to talk to him periodically. And he was a nice priest, but he wanted to become charismatic. So he got another priest to bring him over. One time I could see him after my Mass. I looked across, I could see him. And the charismatic priest was doing the charismatic stuff, and he was back taking notes. How to be a charismatic priest. And so he ran his charismatic, so he turned the parish into a charismatic Minnesota parish. And then finally, one of the members of the parish, what do you call it, Lady of Good Health is the name of the parish, where St. Thomas' body, where St. Thomas was martyred. So they finally got this Lutheran lady to come to Mass. So for the first time in her life, she came to Mass and said, "This is the same as my Lutheran service." So what am I doing here? So she went back to the Lutherans. So there's, and so the same as that other guy. And so that it clearly doesn't do good to souls. The grave mistake is this, to say because they're nice people, therefore what they're doing is nice. That's the problem. That's the philosophical problem behind it. And, well, I know nice Mohammedans. I had a good Muslim taxi driver in India. I had a good Hindu taxi driver, like Muhammad in Bombay, and what's his name? Oh my goodness, in Madras. I can't think of his name now. But they were good guys. Their religion's not good, right? And they needed to become Catholic, right? And which is why we have to stand on the objective truth. And to say things like that, of course, is damaging. It's going to cause confusion.
The bishop seems to be quite influenced by this seer that he writes about every week.
Oh yes, right. Well, you know what? Let's suppose that seer thing was true.
Well, I
Sure.
would be very
When
worried
would
to
be
do
the
it.
time, we're talking about the Rosary Crusade lady, when Dawn Marie, whatever, you know.
Okay. Yeah.
Right? And that's supposing that it was true. When would be the time to talk about it? To reveal it?
No, I don't know. I don't know.
Would it
Not
happen?
now.
Would it happen?
When it happened.
Right.
Right? That was the time.
Right.
And I knew about her in 2010 because Bishop Williams, I was in close contact with Bishop Williamson. Or maybe it was 2011. I forget which year it was. 10 or 11. And, you know, and I was all confidential, so he gave me the thing, and I was supposed to go meet her, and I never successfully met her. I still haven't successfully met her.
You met her?
No,
You didn't?
I went to meet her, but she
Okay.
turned down the meeting.
Well,
I went there to do an investigation. That was the purpose of my trip. Bishop Williamson said, go do an investigation. I said, fine. So I went to do an investigation, and when I went to investigate her, she changed her mind. So I never did the investigation. And so that was it, you know. And so I never had the opportunity to do that investigation. She got scared, and she said, no, don't come. I said, okay.
Oh gosh, to listen to CS today, I think that's terrible, in my opinion.
Well, you know what, supposing that, but what's the value, what did she say? She said the Rosary Crusade was not good.
Yeah.
Do you have to have a degree in theology to figure that out?
Yes,
I mean,
indeed.
any idiot can know that when you are praying for something that's evil, that's probably not good. Praying for the excommunications to be lifted, that's a sin. Do you think Athanasius would pray for his excommunication to be lifted?
No, never thought of it
You
that
would've
Do you
way.
think that
Lots of
St.
thought.
Peter would have prayed that he wouldn't be crucified?
Mhm.
That Andrew prayed that he wouldn't be crucified?
Yes.
This is the glory of Athanasius, the glory of Peter, the glory of, what do you do when you see a statue of St. Paul? He's got a sword. Why? Because that was his ticket to heaven. Got his head chopped off. And so St. Bartholomew was always shown with a knife because he was skinned alive, right? And so he's very happy about that knife. And when they went to get the body of St. Clement of Rome, he was, remember, they tied an anchor around his neck and threw him in the Black Sea. And the Black Sea rolled back 5 miles. They went in, and guess what they found? His body and the anchor. They took his body and the anchor, and they kept the anchor as a relic. Because that anchor was his ticket to heaven.
Yeah.
So the excommunications were the ticket to heaven of Archbishop Lefebvre. And furthermore, to ask for them to be lifted is a lie, because they cannot lift that which is invalid.
Yeah, it's true.
So to pray for that was wicked, and it could only lead to the destruction of the SSPX. Of course, because you're praying
Yes, for something that.
for something that's wicked
Yeah.
and specifically related to your own founder. Right? That's very wicked. And then of course, they didn't lift his excommunications. They don't lift the excommunications of the 4 bishops. You know, remember we said back in the May 27th sermon, they don't. And so that they're still excommunicated by the modern church, which is good. And so, of course it was bad, but you didn't need a revelation from heaven to know that.
Indeed.
And I think what's happening, maybe we're being distracted, looking at things in the wrong way, losing the supernatural view of things. That's what's happening. We're in a supernatural fight, and we have to see things sub specie aeternitatis, under the view of heaven, under the aspect of eternity, right? That's the way we have to look at things, yes.
Bishop Williamson, 23 or 24 years ago, gave a talk in Toronto. And the one thing he said is, everyone out here, I just want you to know, don't follow me as a person. Follow what I'm saying, which is the truth.
And that's right.
And the way Archbishop Lefebvre has always said, he says, if you're not following me, you're following what I'm saying and what Archbishop Lefebvre says. If I ever start to speak differently than that, don't walk away from me, run.
And that's right.
Well, the other week and all, here we're in the word resistance, but yet all we are is really Archbishop Lefebvre's followers. We're not resisting anything.
Right.
We're staying where we were.
That's correct.
But I feel Bishop Williamson is the one who's moving away from where Archbishop Lefebvre was.
That's correct. That's correct.
So because of that, you know, when he's sort of expressing the way the resistance is, I feel he has no fire in the belly anymore. I respect him. I have nothing, you know, like that. But because of that, what it is that's why he needs to go ahead and consecrate some other 2 bishops, is what he's sort of saying he'd like to do, not one.
You know, he said maybe in the next 10 years, right?
Yeah.
But yeah,
Right.
but then he joked. He said that means maybe tomorrow.
No,
Because-
he didn't say that.
That's what
He said tomorrow is within the next 10 years.
Right.
Yeah.
That's called kind of double tongue speak, but it's not really double tongue speak. It's just wait and wait and wait and wait and wait.
Is he
and
going to
wait
do
and
it though,
wait.
do you think?
Not without. I don't believe it'll happen without a miraculous intervention. But you know, the thing is that, you know, he said 2 years ago he's going to consecrate a bishop within the next 2 years. And then he said a few months ago he's going to consecrate a bishop within the next few months. And then he said last year he's going to consecrate a bishop within the next 2 years. And now he says in the next 10 years.
Well, since he says the resistance, not to rely on the resistance, so I don't know that he's still interested in working for the resistance.
Well, you know,
It seems-
yeah, it's what happened 9 days ago was an attack. It was an attack.
Yeah, it was.
And instead of strengthening, its purpose was to weaken.
Yeah, it was
Instead of
very-
uniting, his purpose was to divide.
Yeah, it was very negative.
And, you know, the resistance is shambles. But, you know, one of the things you normally do, when I condemn Bishop Fillet, who is still my superior to this day, and I respect him as my superior. That's why I'm still wearing this white cassock. I hate the white cassock. I don't like it. Besides, for me, I can't keep anything clean anyway. But it was the black cassock. It looks a little better, right? You know, so, you know, and so white is impossible, right? So, but the thing is that I don't like it. But the reason why I wear it is because I'm a priest of Asia. I was expelled from the SSPX from Asia, which was an invalid expulsion. I'm here physically in the West, but I'm a priest of Asia. My people are there, and I was assigned in Asia. I was assigned in the Philippines. I was assigned in India, and Singapore, and all throughout Asia, and that was my assignment. It's still my assignment because I have not been transferred. I haven't been transferred. I'm still a priest of Asia. Because of the crisis of the church and the crisis of the SSPX, I am required to be here right now. But I'm still under Bishop Fillet. He's still my superior. And I visited Father Stalin, my new superior in Asia, just a few months ago, to tell him clearly why I disobey him. So he would hear it directly. And we talked for about an hour. It was all required. You know, and then we discussed another fact that I'd let him know precisely why I disobey him. And you know, he says it's not his problem; it's upstairs' problem. You know, so but you know that but we still belong to the church and belong to the Society of St. Pius X. I have to do the work of the Society of St. Pius X, and that work is respond to the call of the faithful. Give them the faith. That's what we do. That's our charism in the SSPX. Preach retreats and try to rebuild Christendom. That's it. That's what we have to do. And it's not even a special mission of the SSPX. It's the obligation of every priest. And in a time of crisis, everybody takes a higher obligation to do that. And Bishop Williamson is, for some reason, only God knows, has decided to have a different direction.
Father, do you think he's too influenced by this seer? Because he seems to be focused on her so much.
That's for the last 4 weeks. Next week, wait for something else.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So can you clarify this a bit more? So some
Yeah.
woman who Bishop Williamson knows claims to have had a vision.
Well, he talked about it in the 4 latest comments. What he said there, I didn't read the 3rd one, but I read the 4th one, basically is what's in the dossier, except he just gave the conclusions. Our Lady is supposed to have appeared to her and told her to tell Bishop Fillet to have a rosary crusade back in 2006. And I was there in 2006 at the Arsville pilgrimage. And the lady told me that I met her, but I don't remember. There was 2,500 people there at that.
Yeah.
And you know, so apparently one of them was her, and I saw her, but I don't remember which one. You know, she was, right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, and so but Bishop Fillet was there as well. Bishop Fillet, she met Bishop Fillet at that 2006 and said, you need a rosary crusade. And then they said the First Rosary Crusade was going to be for the, supposed to be for consecrating Russia. And if he did it, there would be a miracle, Russia would be consecrated, etc. If he didn't do it, then it would be like, he didn't want to do it because he was afraid he would fail and he would look bad. So he did the Rosary Crusade for freeing the Latin Mass, which was which was already going to happen. It was a done deal, right? And
So
he
knew before.
of course, when Pope Benedict became Pope in 2005, what was the rumor from the moment he became Pope? Before the end of 2005, he would free up the Latin Mass. And then he said, well, by the end of 2006, he'll certainly do it. And he did on July 7, 2007, only he didn't free up the Latin Mass. That's the only problem. He lied. He did more evil in Summum Pontificum than is found in Ecclesia de Afflicta and Ad Quattro Ordinatos. That's the worst of the three documents, quote unquote, freeing up the Latin Mass. It's the most evil of all of them. And to call that a success of the Rosary Crusade is mocking heaven, as I mentioned in the sermon of May 27, 2012, right? Yeah. Pentecost sermon with the barking dog sermon, right? This is a mockery of heaven. It's a mockery of heaven. Blessed Virgin Mary was not happy about Summum Pontificum. Absolutely not. And what was the result of Summum Pontificum? The death of the SSPX. Before that, every priest knew indult equals bad. Some could explain it well, some it badly, but everybody knew indult bad. After that, we didn't know whether to say it was bad anymore because Bishop Flay told us to have a Te Deum. And now the indult is not the indult, now it's called the motto. Change the name. It used to be called NKVD, then they changed the name to KGB. But they didn't change the soldiers any. They didn't change what they were doing, they just changed the name. And so they changed the name from indult to motu proprio. And so, okay, well maybe the motu proprios is not as bad as the indult. Now priests became confused within the SSPX.
But do you think like what the Pope in October there, his session that he had, I mean this is so obvious that
The Synod,
the Synod, that Philly must realize that it's really totally unacceptable. Do you think that the society might go back again to
No.
where they were before?
Listen to what they're saying. No. The talks have reopened, quote unquote, they never
But-
closed.
Oh, gosh,
But
can
the
you-
talks have continued.
Uh-huh.
Bishop Flay says reopened, Rome says continued, and so far, Rome's the one who's been honest, and Menzinger's been the one that's been dishonest. Every other time in the last 3 years. So Rome says continuation of the ongoing talks. This is last month, right? September 23rd, there was the meeting of Bishop Flay and Cardinal Mueller, right? And the others. And the continuation of the talks. All it is doing is that they're beginning to reveal it to the public what's already been agreed behind closed doors. That's all.
Oh, it's awful. My God.
Right? And the priests are saying, like my own brother, well, maybe if we make a deal with Rome, it won't be a complete compromise because as long as we're still doing what we're doing, even if we're approved, it's not a compromise.
Archbishop Lefebvre says doctrine is what you have to agree to first before you can agree to anything else. So how can they agree to anything unless they do that first?
Yes, and also we can't just agree. We cannot agree. You see, I already agree with our Lord Jesus Christ that teaches the Catholic Church.
Truth is true.
That's an agreement I can't change. However, Pope Francis doesn't agree with Jesus Christ. So what's to happen is Pope Francis has to agree with Christ. And the liberal modernists in the conciliar church have to agree with Christ. Once they agree with Christ, then we're lined up again. And then I don't make an agreement with them. I just obey him. You can only make an agreement with an equal. You can't make an agreement with a superior. With a superior, you've got two options, obey or disobey. Agreement is not one of the options. It's not one of the options. When he gives a legitimate command, you obey. When he gives an illegitimate command, you disobey. But under no circumstances do you make an agreement. You can't do that. The agreement's immoral. And so it first looks like a change of language, doctrinal agreement before practical agreement, But in fact, it's not. It's an essential change in 2006 when they said doctrinal agreement before practical agreement. Doctrinal agreement does not necessarily mean Rome's conversion. It might mean they give in on one point of they'll we'll accept the virgin birth, but we won't accept the Immaculate Conception. All right, we'll go even on that. We'll go 50-50. Right? You can't do that in the Catholic faith. Either you accept all or you accept nothing. And they change the words to create confusion, but in the end, it's just the same lies, same heresies of Vatican II being repeated inside the SSPX. And then when Bishop Williamson uses as an example of you can go to SSPX masses just like you can go to new masses, he needs to check his crowd. You say that to the other guys. Not to us, Check the audience, right? Right? You don't go to a Republican rally and say, hooray, Obama, right? Right? Check the audience, right? Okay? And they forgot to check the audience, right?
Doesn't that lose his credibility then, right there? It makes you, it opens up the floodgates of concern, with what he's stating.
It does. And what it does is it causes a great fear and consternation. Why? Because he seems to be the only bishop.
Yes, that's it.
But you know what? God knows how to make bishops. God knows how to deal with it. He figured this out a long time ago. Consider the Blessed Virgin Mary. The Blessed Virgin Mary, even though she had a perfect mind, she didn't have infused knowledge. When the angel came and said Christ is going to be born, she knew it was going to be 9 months from now. She also knew that St. Joseph was one of these stubborn guys, and he wasn't going to move out of Nazareth. And so we got several very serious problems. One of them is Joseph is a guy who doesn't want to move. And the prophecy says Christ is supposed to be born in Bethlehem. So what could she have done? Boy, Bethlehem's really nice this time of year, Joe. I'm telling you. Remember, David he was a big fan of Bethlehem. I'm not saying anything that Bethlehem's a nice town. That's all I'm saying. And so she could have tried to manipulate St. Joseph into going to Bethlehem. And if anybody could do it, she could do it. But she didn't do that. She figured God had all eternity to think about this. And he had a way to figure out how they would get to Bethlehem. And they showed up on December 24th. Right on time. So she wasn't worried about it, and neither was St. Joseph worried about it. So we have to have a similar attitude. I don't know how God's going to provide a bishop to ordain our guys. But he'll figure something out. And I don't know exactly how things are going to work out, but I do know that I have to stand for the truth clearly. And that I have to condemn the errors clearly. Period. And I know what that truth is because I was trained that truth, not only in the seminary, I was trained that truth when I was a child. Father Urban Snyder, Father Hannafin, the old priests used to come by. I was trained that truth as a child. And then I was trained that same truth in the seminary. And I've spoken about that same truth, both with the faithful and with priests, down the last 20 years. And don't see any need in changing. Don't see any need in changing. And God will provide. And also, I know also the truth that if there's failure, it's just because of my own sins. That's all. And then what do I have to do? Repent. Doesn't change the truth. See, it doesn't change the truth at all. The truth is we have to do what we're doing, and not only we have to do it, everybody's got to do it. And that's why they're angry. Because I say there's no option. And I've got the saints behind me. I've got 2,000 years of teaching behind me. And what are they trying to do? They're trying to isolate me. Okay, no problem. We have to stand for the truth. God will fill in the gaps. We can't adjust the truth for the purpose of a good ending. Compromising for the sake of moving forward. It won't work, especially nowadays. When you're nice to the devil, he's not going to be grateful. Right? He's not going to be nice back. He isn't. The first person that they kill are their own devils. They don't love the devils more than they love the saints. They hate everybody with an infinite hatred. And so you don't ingratiate yourself with them. And so when you compromise with the devil, it just ends in death. And the truth is more powerful. I mean, we can see how, the bishop, his power of the last 30 years, Bishop Williamson, was standing on the truth. When he stops standing on the truth, he loses his power. Even if he's the only bishop and there's no other bishop. He keeps telling me, don't worry, there's other bishops out there. You can get a sedevacantist bishop to consecrate, right? Ordain your guys. Get some guy who got ordained in a garage by, Pope whatever, right? To come and do the ordinations, So, no. I said, no, that's not true. He says, I'm not the only pebble on the beach. It's not true. He is the only pebble on the beach. How do we get more pebbles? I don't know, but I do know God knows how to multiply pebbles. So we have to have that approach. It's time to have faith. That's the time we're in right now. It's time to have faith. And, it's like, you see it beginning to develop in Russia. It's like the prayer, you could actually, there's a good video. What's his name? Pankrestos. Pankrestos. I think it's a Ukrainian videos on YouTube. Pankrestos is the name of the guy. And it's about monks in a monastery. And one of the stories is, you are three, we are three. It's about prayer. And I'm sure it's a true story from a couple hundred years ago. They put a little video on it. It's really, really very good. But this is the old monk, he's 50 years a monk, traveled with a couple of his monks, and they're out on the water, going on sailing, right, with their sailors. And they said, there's an island here with 3 saints on it. They said, there's no saints anymore. Saints are finished. And he goes, no. The sailors say there's 3 saints on this island. They're saints. And he goes, no, give me a break. And he goes, you got to see them. And, all right. So they pull over to the island. He gets off, and he goes into the island, and there's these 3 fishermen, and they're dressed in rags, and all that kind of thing. And so he goes to the 3 fishermen, and the 3 fishermen, they say, they can't read or anything. And they put on the little sandals, little what do you call it, garbage sandals, and they said read them and everything. And he said, there are supposed to be 3 saints living on this island. He goes, really? There's no saints here? We're the only ones that live here. And he goes, well, okay, well, so tell me, what do you do? And he goes, well, many years ago, 20 years ago, or maybe 30 years ago, we were fishing on this lake, and there was a great storm. Greatest storm like the end of the world. And our ship sunk, and we were caught in the storm. We all grabbed onto one plank, and we vowed to God, God, if you save us, and we end up on an island, we will stay on that island until we die. So they ended up on the island, and they were saved, so they kept their vow. And he said, well, what about Mass? What about sacraments? He said, well, the priest comes from the mainland once a year. Gives us confession and Holy Communion every year. But we keep our vow, we stay on the land. All we do is fish and work here. And he goes, what do you know? Do you know your catechism? He goes, no, I never went to catechism, but we do know this. The only thing we know is that there are 3 persons in one God. God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Ghost. That's all we know. And we know that we are 3 fishermen. Elias, John, and whatever the other guy's name is, Jacob, right? And we didn't know any prayers, so we made up our own prayer. They went in front of the cross and said, you are 3, we are 3, have mercy on us. So the 3 persons in God, 3 fishermen on an island, have mercy on us. And that's their prayer. And the elder said, well, that's not exactly, So then they sang the Our Father, the Russian Our Father. They said, can you teach us that prayer? I said, okay. So they tried to teach them the Our Father. Teach them the Our Father, teach them the Our Father, teach them the Our Father. And they were trying to memorize it. Then they went out. They left finally and got on the boat and said, well, they're very simple guys. They're decent guys, but they're not saints. And so they got on the boat. When they got on the boat, they're about 300 yards from the shore. And they get on the boat, look over, and the 3 fishermen start running across the water. And they run across the top of the water. And they said, elder, elder, elder. He goes, what? what comes after hallowed be thy name? Right? And so they couldn't remember the Our Father. So they ran all the way across to the boat and said, what comes after hallowed be thy name? And they were standing on the water, right? And the elder said, I have 50 years a monk. I have never walked on water. I will never walk on water. No way. You just go back and say your prayer. You're praying fine. Go back to your island and say your prayer. So they walk back on the water, right? Now the thing is that I think those are true stories, you know. And the fact is, what we need right now is the faith of those fishermen. That's what we need right now. We have to have the faith that, you know, we don't maybe know all the details, we don't know everything correctly, but we know that we have to have that there's three persons in one God, and that's it. And we know that, and we're going to pray as we can, and they're praying with their heart. And it has a little dissertation about what prayer is, prayer coming from the heart, and so on. But the thing is that that's because we've become so educated, modern scholastic, not real scholastic like St. Thomas Aquinas and St. Albert the Great, but modern fake scholastic. They've separated the truth from charity. Separated, everything has been divided. Demonic means ripped apart. Our whole world is ripped apart. Our minds are ripped apart. Everything is ripped apart. And so how are we going to fight? That's what I mentioned in the sermon. We just got to fight everybody at once. It's no big deal. Because we have to have the unity of truth. But we can't have it now without a special gift of faith. And we got to just really ask for that gift of faith. And you got to remember, when it comes to getting a gift, the very definition of a gift is getting something that you don't deserve. Otherwise, it's not a gift. It's payment. So we can't say, well, I'm not worthy of it. Of course you're not worthy of it. Nobody's worthy of it. To think you're worthy of it just means you're an idiot. So nobody's worthy of any gift that comes from God. But we have to beg for it anyway. He didn't say ask because you deserve it. He said ask so you can receive. That's what we have to do right now. That's why God is going to send. Father Bishop Williamson says we don't need vocations. We don't need seminaries. You can't form seminarians out of modern guys. Well, I think there can be seminarians out of modern guys. In fact, I know there can be. And I have no doubt about it whatsoever. Because God said He will be with us until the consummation of the world. And as of right now, it ain't consummated. So therefore, He's with us. Right? It's not that complicated. So we then have to continue. That's it. That's it. Meanwhile, you have the. But if you what is your? You say overall though. I mean, what's your impression of things overall? He said the resistance is in shambles. It's in trouble. What is your thought about that?
Are you asking us?
Asking, yes.
No, I don't think it is.
Mm-hmm.
I was, as I said, I felt it was very negative when the bishop was here. Didn't feel uplifted at all, and I thought to myself, you know, thinking about it, I thought, no, I didn't like it really. I mean, I respect him too, just like Stephen said. But in my thoughts, I thought, no, I'm still with the resistance. I do feel you have to fight, you know, and you can't just.
And you have to build.
Into
you have to keep building.
Yeah.
And that's what you and Father Hugo have been doing for us.
Yes.
And you're building, and you have this like superhuman strength to be doing it. It comes from God. It's got to be coming.
Well, you know,
from
the
God.
fact is that it's not,
Yes,
materially speaking, even it's not very difficult at all. You see, one thing about the life of the priest, even though, you know, we're in the front line, so to speak, and very visible, our life is nowhere near as difficult as a father of a family and the mother of a family. I mean, you know, we get breaks, for instance, you know, we don't get a break, right? You know, and you know, but the thing is that there are many, I mean, you could say maybe on a spiritual level, you could argue this is more difficult, but it's not really. Our life is pretty easy. And, you know, and that's one of the things that makes it inexcusable, right? If it was really difficult, then I could understand, you know what I mean? But is it really that hard, you know? You know, having a Starbucks.
Well, there is your good
It's not
food
that
over
hard,
there.
you know?
It's getting cold, Father.
Latte, extra shot. Yeah. You know, it's not that hard. But I'm saying that the thing is that it really isn't. If it was, then you could say, okay, it takes superhuman strength. It doesn't. It's not difficult. Not only that, but Father Hugo and I are doing the exact same things now that we did when we were ordained priests. Father Giselle, we're doing exactly the same. We haven't changed at all. We go on the circuits, we come back home, right? We go back out on the circuits, come back home. We've been doing that for 20 years.
But I'm sure you didn't travel quite as much
Yeah,
as
I
you
did.
do now.
Yeah.
You did?
I mean, the same time, but not always the same places, you know.
Mhm.
Now we're going to many more different places, whereas before I'd be going to, like when I was in India, I was only going to about 16 or 20 different places. Now I'm going to about 80 different places. But the problem is that what do you call it? It's exactly, it's just time-wise, in fact, it's about the same, time-wise. In other words, instead of going to Denver every week, as I used to do,
Fly to India.
it's going all over the place every week, right? It's not much different as far as the physical side is concerned. We go out, same as. That's why Father Hugo, we're just doing the same as we always did. It's not a big deal. You know, the only difference, the only difference is that before, if I didn't go to Denver, or if I didn't go to a place to say Mass, well, some other priest went there. Now, if I don't go there, they don't get Mass. So I'm trying to balance the masses in such a way that, you know, I don't want the people in Portales, New Mexico to be abandoned. You know, it's 8-hour drive there, an 8-hour drive from there to the next place. But there's a few people there, but I can't go there all the time, but I don't want them to be abandoned. But when I go there, it means I can't go somewhere else. You see what I mean? And the same thing with New Hampshire. This takes 5 hours to drive to New Hampshire, but there's only a few people there. I can't go there all the time, but I go there as I can. And so, and it's connected around the Danbury and Sparta circuit. Others are connected around the Denver circuit, around the Phoenix. We connect them around circuits, you know. But the thing is that before, if I didn't go, someone else went. Now, if I don't set up a Mass, they don't get a Mass. And again, it only makes sense if you recognize the necessity of the situation. Objectively speaking, souls are being harmed by continuing the mainstream SSPX. They mean well, and the priest means well. But what they're doing is harmful to the faith. And we don't base it on individual priests. Maybe some priests are bad. I'm sure some of them are Masons. Okay. So what? There's been Masons around for a long time. And if one dies, don't worry, there's 25 volunteers to take his place. So it doesn't matter that there's Masons and bad guys inside of the society and inside of the Fraternity of St. Peter and inside of every organization that calls itself traditional. So there's going to always be bad guys. And if there aren't bad guys in your organization, then you're doing something wrong. It means the devil doesn't need to put bad guys in your organization. And that means you're doing something wrong. We can't worry about that. We simply stand with the truth and assume that the priests are good. Most of them are good. We know some of them are wicked. And some wicked ones have to be denounced. In general, you try to avoid denouncing an individual, but sometimes you have to. You must. We must denounce Bishop Fillet. What he's doing is wicked. What he's teaching is wicked. The way he's speaking is wicked. What he's doing to priests is wicked. He has to be condemned. Because it's harming souls and it's public. If he's just doing private things that are wicked, then we can leave that be. But if he's doing public things that are wicked, no, those things have to be dealt with. They have to be addressed, you know. And there's a change of faith, so we can't accept that, you know.
Do you know Father Gruner?
Oh, of course, yeah, Father Gruner, yes.
Yeah, he was there too.
Yes, he was just there he didn't know what was going on. He was just there
Well,
taking
I
pictures.
think that
He
the
was, you
bishop,
know,
they stayed at his place, so
Yes.
I just wonder, you know, how they...
Father Gruner told me 2 years ago he firmly supports the resistance. He told me right away, when I went there, I met to him, and he told me that, you know, any priest needs a place to stay, you tell them they can stay here, right? So he made that offer, he says, and he showed me the place, the house and everything. And then he also told me of the importance of an organization. He's the one that told me back in 2012, he says the wisdom of Archbishop Lefebvre was that he established an organization. Because in 1970, there were more than 3,000 priests standing against Vatican II. But they were individual priests. What happened to all of them? They died. They all died. Right? I don't think there's anybody alive from 1970. There are some priests who were priests at that time, but they were no solar priests at that time. I don't think there's any traditional priest who was traditional in 1970 who's still alive today. Yeah.
Do you think Bishop Williamson, in a sense, trying to hurry on the end of the world?
No. Not at all.
No.
It's just an excuse.
Right.
You know, I was thinking about it yesterday, because in the seminary, it's in our old retreat house, and where we had a monastery. Now, in 1970s, that place was built in 1982, so it was already the 80s. But in 82 it was built. So when that place was built in 82, we put shelves, which are not bookshelves. We got books in them now. It's not bookshelves. They were shelves for 5,000 granola cans. We had granola cans and corn cans and bean cans. Why? To survive the chastisement, right? And it was all dry. I mean, remember the 70s? I don't know if you were traditional Catholic back then in the 70s and the 80s, but everybody did it, right? And, I mean, we had cans, we had the food, we were ready. If Bishop Williamson really believed that chastisement was coming tomorrow, he would have the special granola cans, he would have the water, he would have the bunker built. You know, he would be sitting in there right now.
Bunkers are expensive.
Right? That's right, yeah, but if you believe it's coming, you pay the money if you think it's happening, right? I remember back in the 70s, and when I was raised with all this, you know, I remember hearing all the conspiracy stuff when I was a kid, right? That's all I heard, you know, world's coming in. I remember Father Hannafin, the weekly sermon. Jimmy Carter is straight from hell, you know, and then you know the what do you call it? And the world can't get any worse. The world's coming to an end in 1976. It's coming to an end in 76, and it was coming to an end in 77, 70, and then 80 he stopped giving a year. But it was 76, 77, 78, 79, 80, and then it's coming to an end. Stop giving a year.
If you hoard all the food, you're going to be the first one to be attacked.
You're going to be the first one killed, right? 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 There's going to be a lot of grateful people that you were prepared. Right? You know? And but the thing is that, but remember, they did those things. But if you really, really believe the world's coming to an end tomorrow, you're going to take action, right? Right. So that, you know, maybe you're going to go to confession. Maybe you're going to, you know, give away all your stuff. You know, if you know the world's coming in tomorrow, you got $1 million in the bank, you better start spending. Right? Yes. Yeah.
What's the rationale behind not creating an organization then for Bishop Williams?
Well, that's the $64,000 question. He claims it's because it's going to be infiltrated. Therefore, don't have an organization. That's the official reason given. And he says, he said in that talk, think of a loose association of priests freely associating with one another. When do you freely associate with somebody else? When you need something. So is that an association? The United States is a good example of that. Supposing there were no Masons in the United States, and they're just a Catholic people. The idea of the United States is impossible. The idea was to have 13 separate independent states, which means countries. The word state means country. State is country. State is not a part of a country. State equals country. So there's going to be United States, truly independent states, each with his own king, each with his own army, which is now called the the National Guard, right? Each with its own king, each with its own army, and they're all going to be just madly in love with each other, and they're going to get along great. Has that ever happened in the history of the world?
Okay, this may be a dumb question,
Yeah.
but is the United States of America a country?
Oh, it is.
Okay.
It's a country. But the way it was started is not as a country.
Yeah.
It was started, that's why the South couldn't win, really. The South still tried to say, we're United States. We're not one state. We're United States, plural. And the North said, yeah, that's nice, but forget it. We believe in the Union, right? It isn't going to work. You can't have 13, now 25 different countries trying to decide who's going to take over California. All you're going to have is a massive war. And it will be so weak, you'll never be able to have any power in the rest of the world. The only future of this land is to have one country, one state. And so that's why the Civil War had to happen. Even if there was no slavery, which was not part of the war anyway, if there was no masonry, assuming all that stuff wasn't there, well, they would have been dumb like that and just come up with that idea. But the thing is that it just couldn't work. Has to be one country or independent countries that are going to fight each other. Those are the only options. And so now they're trying to make one new world order, which is going to make the whole world into one country, right? Yeah. You know, so you know it's going to make the whole world into one country, right?
Well, they've started with various unions like the EU,
Right.
where I mean now it's open borders.
Yeah, it's open borders, and also I've noticed a difference myself, even amongst our priests in the last 10 years. They talk about themselves as being Europeans. They used to say, I'm French, I'm German, you know, I'm Italian, I'm English, right? Now they say, well, we're Europeans. They don't even use the term, anymore. They've lost their identity of the individual country. Not 100%, but to a great extent they have. That currency change is so important.
Yeah.
You know, the making of the euro. You know,
Well, whoever
it's
owns
such a
the money
psychological. Not only that, but you have same money across the nations. You're not different nations anymore. Money is a real practical way that you know you're going to a different country. It's the practical, visible, daily way. So by just making a universal currency, you kill that, right? You kill it, you know.
I think it was might have been one of the Rothschilds who said, "I don't care whoever the head." I'm summarizing.
Oh,
I don't
that's
care
right.
whoever the head of state is. Whoever runs the monetary system runs that state.
That's right.
And I run the money here.
That's
So,
right. That's right. Yeah, that's true. Whoever coins the money runs it, and that's only a phenomenon of the last since the ages, since the 1300s, since recent times. In olden time, kings were absolutely poor, but they were the king. They were the king. When the king walked into a room, he was the king. He didn't need to have an army. He didn't need to have money.
Oh, yeah.
You just obeyed him because he was the king. Same like a priest, right?
Yep.
Priest comes in, he's a priest. Boom, he's in it. What does he say? That's what I do. The king used to be king because he was king, not because he had money and an army and these surrounding elements. He was, and so his kingship was inside of himself. Now it's not that way anymore. It's all surrounded. But but the I don't know. I just went to pack it in, I suppose. But I mean, you had to persevere. That much is certain. It was definitely, I think, of all the talks of the bishop recently, he kind of summarized everything he's been saying for the last 2 years in one talk. That's kind of what he did. Before he said those elements in different talks, spread out. Now he's kind of put them all together in one and made a little bit of a battle speech. And of course at the time you're like, what's going on? Maybe you had a sense of, well, I'm not sure about this. This doesn't seem right. But I think that somehow it was calculated, it was planned, it was timed. The new website, the new information about did you know that there was a secret apparition of Our Lady, and if they had listened to heaven, this wouldn't have happened. And then you put the priests together. It was like a beachhead landing, right? To promote the new whatever. But that's the problem. What is the new whatever they're promoting? It's about as clear as Bishop Fathers and Deas's answers. What is it that he's promoting? What is it that he's standing for?
Father, does he have priests that he's associated with that follow him?
No, he doesn't accept leadership directly. He says, I'm not the leader of anything. All he does is go around and pat people on the back and give his moral support. He also says that he needs to see things develop on their own. Because there's a certain dignity to being a bishop. And he has to make sure that things have developed. It's like a general saying, I need to see what's going to happen with the army first, and then I'll take charge. The army isn't an army without a general. And the general has to form the army, train the army, guide the army, and say charge. And I think that one of the challenges, I think, of the bishop is that 40 years or 70 years being a teacher, in the classroom, if things don't work out, you can always do another test. But like I mentioned many times, if you practice dodging cars, if it doesn't work out, guess what? There isn't any retake button, right? You're just dead. It's like the terrorist cartoon I saw when the instructor was saying he had the bombs on him. He showed the other three guys, Now pay attention because I'm only going to show you this once. Right? It wasn't going to be a second class, you know. And so there's certain things, but in the battlefield you don't get a second class. Furthermore, in the battlefield, you have to make decisions without the certitude of victory, without seeing every single detail. I mean, it happens in marriage all the time. How do you know when you buy the house you're going to pay for it? I don't know. That's why they have foreclosure, right? It doesn't always work out. You don't know you're going to be able to pay for it. You don't know you're going to have your job 10 years from now. You don't know you're going to be able to afford the car that you took out a $400,000 loan on. You don't know that you're going to be able to make it through the next year because you got $12 in the bank and 12 kids. And so, you just, you don't, but you know what? Somehow you survive and you make decisions anyway. In the classroom, they say in economic class, you have to have so many thousands of dollars. You got to budget it per kid, budget it for this, budget it for that, and that's really nice as long as you don't live in the real world. Right? It doesn't work in the real world. And so we're now in a battlefield, which is the real world, and we have to make decisions in the real world with the real circumstances that we have. We're the real soldiers that God sends us, and it's not beautiful. But what are you going to do? They were going to bring in the tanks and reserves. They got blown up. What are you going to do? All right. Grab a pitchfork and charge. So you still have to fight with what you have. And that might be why Russia is going to convert the world, because the Germans, they say that the Germans, World War II, they say the greatest soldier on earth is the Russian. They respected the Russian more than anybody.
Well, Putin seems to be the only one with the
Because they say those German soldiers, they used to describe how 5,000 Russians would come charging at them without a gun. And there's 100 Germans with guns shooting at them, and they know they're going to lose. He says, we knew we had no chance against them. They have no guns, but it doesn't matter how many of them you kill. They never get scared. They never quit. And they keep coming, and there's always more of them, and they're going to get you. They're just tough.
Not all of them.
What? No.
I'm sober.
They're remember, they got Mongol blood in them, you know. I mean, there is a toughness there that the Russians are tough. They are tough.
Were you talking about the Germans versus the Russians?
Germans versus Russians, World War II, yeah. He said they were, also, there's no such thing as don't surrender. That's the other thing, don't surrender.
Yeah.
That's a big, bad idea. Because you're not going to prison camp, and if you do, you're going there for the rest of your life. And of course, they're going to torture and kill you.
Oh, yeah.
And also, don't take prisoners. So they knew, don't take prisoners, don't become a prisoner. And that was, it was the front you didn't want to fight on, the Russian front.
My Opa fought on the Russian front. He survived. He got a few medals.
Yeah, that was a real battle there, and of course they 25 million Russians died in World War II. I mean, it was like half of them, or 1/3 of all the deaths of World War II was Russian. Right? And they just, some of them was Russians killing Russians, right? They're communists, But it wasn't just because they were communists, because there's many communist countries. Not just because they're communist. There's something tough about them. And that might be, the Cossacks, they were tough guys in the old days, And so, I mean, God did choose Russia to be part of the conversion of the world. And I mean, he knows why he did that, but he did it. He chose Russia, and Russia is going to be key to the conversion. You see the signs of that too, when those Catholic Russians in 2010 repudiated Benedict XVI. Not Orthodox, but Uniates. And they consecrated 4 bishops against the will of Rome, got excommunicated.
Now, does that have anything to do with the Society of St. Josephat?
No.
Okay. But no. You know of the society? Yes.
I got some indirect communication with them. Somebody there called somebody in Poland, and all the Polish people don't know each other. And the Polish guy contacted me, and we had like an indirect, but it never developed.
Okay.
Yeah, and I don't know. I don't remember. This is like a little while ago. And, you know, so, no, it's not the St. Joseph ad, no. And then, you know, and then but anyway, you can see they're not making the perfect choices, but you can see that it's clear that there's grace moving in Russia. You know, even though Putin's evil, the Orthodox are not Catholic, but there's something happening there. It's a preparation of the soil. You know, that's what's happening. You know,
We better go.
maybe we better pack it in. Get up there, pack
The
it in.
kids are gonna rent the
Okay.
house.
All right. Oops, 1 second. These are smelly candles.
I think the one's in the corner by the infant flower.
Okay, well that one is okay. All right, let's see if we're Father, Son, Holy Ghost, amen. Glory be to the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost.
As it was in the beginning, is now, and shall be, world without end.
Saint Vincent Pfeiffer,
Pray for us.
Saint Jude,
Pray for us.
Lady Victory,
Pray for us.
Lady Sorrows,
Pray for us.
Lady of Christians,
Pray for us.
Saint Ignatius.
Pray for us.
Son.